All right. It's the 2nd of November, and for everybody here for the next update on the Oscars, as we all know, we are now entering into the next phase of the Oscar race and the whole award season. That's the early frontrunners stage. This is where we kind of have a little bit of a clearer picture of where we're going here in the Oscar race. By now, and it varies year to year, but probably about 80% of the films that are going to be in Oscar contention have been at least screened somewhere, either for critics or for press. They don't all have to be theatrically released for the public yet, but 80% or higher have been released in some form or another up to this point. There's a couple, key players or ones that could really crash the party here, coming up here in the last parts of the race here in this calendar year, I should say. Particularly, we've got, of course, Vice is heavy on the mind. Let's see, I'm kind of scrolling through the list here. Mary Queen of Scots is a big one. We know Mary Queen of Scots is going to be at AFI Fest, and that is coming up very soon. The Mule is still a big question. Trying to think. Mary Poppins Returns could blow open the race a little bit. Maybe not in terms of Best Picture, but maybe a few. Definitely the technical categories for sure. We'll see about the rest of them there. Welcome to Marwen hasn't screened yet. I don't know. I'm not so high on that one, but just to name it. On the Basis of Sex has not been shown yet, but that's another one that could here and there might get a little bit of support here, and I think those are really the big ones that we're really focusing on. This about 4 or 5 there. So yeah. So anyways, as we enter into this next phase, just today I made a lot of changes to the Oscar categories here. We're going to start because I want to update this one. I want to update the Golden Globes one. I haven't really gotten into much of the tech categories yet, so I'm going to attempt those. I know at this rate, like a lot of the like IndieWire, Gold Derby doesn't. They don't really open up on the tech categories until we get to like around closer to Thanksgiving time. But so far this year, they do have a couple of those categories open for predictions as well. So that's where I kind of that's another way for me to kind of gauge, okay, what's everybody else thinking? Am I alone on thinking this, that, and so on and so forth. So, so I want to do the tech categories though in a separate video as well. So we've got some work to do here. So before we get into that though, I've seen a couple of movies, and I always like to kind of update everybody here just to give my personal opinions on stuff, even if they're a little controversial sometimes. But anyways, the first one I've seen, it's not an Oscar contender by any means, but Halloween, the new version of that, enjoyed it. I obviously it's nowhere near as good as the original. The original's, I think, for the kind of film that it's set up and that it spawned. How many dozens and dozens of slasher films through the years. The original is kind of perfect for what it is trying to be and what it ended up kind of emulating for that kind of excuse me, for that kind of horror film. But this remake or sequel or whatever the fuck you want to call it, Halloween 2018, I think is now the kind of common phrase that's being uttered. I enjoyed it. I thought the opening was actually one of the weakest parts of the film because it really when you look at that first film in retrospect, it's like the opening kind of gets you. And right away, the next scene is Michael Myers escaping the prison, and sure, or not prison, but mental hospital, whatever, what have you. I can't remember if they called it that specifically in the first film, but anyways, it was the first film really gets going. This sequel, that's kind of the new version, 2018 version, has a much kind of more cold open, and it really takes its time to get to it. It's also obviously a lot bloodier and a lot more raw in some ways than the original. Well, maybe raw is the wrong word. Definitely gorier than the original. And there's a lot. Some of the kills are a little creative. A lot of them are kind of repeated here and there, but it's that's all in good fun, I think, for the slasher films. The Jamie Lee Curtis thing, I wasn't. Everybody kind of lost their shit when they announced that Jamie Lee Curtis, if I can say her name correctly, was coming back, but I was like, well, she did how many? Well, she did the first one and the second one, and then she skipped out on most of the sequels after that and came back for H2O and the one after that. So she's been in and out of the franchise. So that wasn't a big shock to me that they got her back. I was actually expecting a lot less of her in the film. I thought she would kind of be there toward the beginning. She disappears from the middle, but then comes back in the end. But she's kind of a through line. And they really kind of get into not only her, but her daughter and her granddaughter and how they're affected by her and the legacy of what happened that night 40 years ago and all that. And that was, kind of a mixed bag because I thought Judy Greer, who is great in everything she does, I just thought was bland as hell in this. The actress who plays the granddaughter is a newcomer, I believe, and she was better. But then again, the Judy Greer character is kind of, is given less screen time and not as big a focus until later in the film. But not to give too much away. But anyways, and then I thought, yeah, once it got going though, and it kind of once the kills started coming and all that, some of the kills I really liked. Some of them I was like, okay, yep. And there were hits and misses throughout, and I kind of actually I was getting bored actually by the end of the first act or so, and then once the second act starts and the kills really start coming in, that's when I was like, okay, now I'm back on board. And then I thought the last 20-25 minutes or so I thought really worked. I was afraid because there's kind of a third act twist, kind of, sort of, that people have already talked about it, I'm sure, but just in case you haven't seen it yet, I won't go much further into what happens. But I know a lot of people were very, very upset with that and really didn't like the movie overall because of it. I thought it's one thing we have to remember when they do these new versions of Halloween, or they'll probably do another version of Friday the 13th after this, and another version of Elm Street, another version of, we've had how many fucking remakes of Texas Chainsaw Massacre as well. It's like you can only do so much when you're remaking this film to kind of pay homage and tip your cap to the original, but you also have to kind of do your own thing. And I think this what happens there is this movie trying its own thing and trying a new thing. I didn't think it was 100% successful, but I at least give him a little bit of credit for not doing a copy paste of the exact plot of the original, just updating it with, okay, so one or two of these characters, well, really just one, has been through this before, so that I enjoyed. And anyways, so yeah, I like the film overall. It's not on my top 10 list of the year or anything like that. And like I said, it's not an Oscar contender. At least we don't think so. But wanted to share my thoughts on that. And then I did see today Bohemian Rhapsody that just opened. I'll tell you what, my mother raised me right. She grew me up on Queen, if that makes sense, if you get what I mean. I mean, I knew the words Bohemian Rhapsody when I was probably about 7 or 8. I don't know. A lot of people might not find that impressive, but anyways, a lot of the original, because we had like one or two Queen CDs that we just would continually throw in and play all the way through and everything. So I as far as the songs go, I know almost everything by Queen. Not every last title, of course, but like a lot of it. But I've never really been curious about the actual background of how the band got started and what happened in the mid '80s when Freddie kind of went his own way, but then came back. And obviously, I knew about the whole AIDS thing and Freddie's bisexuality, which led to his homosexuality, or depending on how you read that. But anyways. That I knew about enough, without having read a textbook on it or anything. So I went into the film really just saying, okay, I'll bring up the Bryan Singer thing a little bit because there's something really, really fucked up happening that I think should be addressed. But we'll come to that. It's not a rant by any means, but it's pretty close. I'll put it that way. As far as the film goes, though, I thought. There were two very exceptional parts to this film. Number one, I thought, was the performance by Rami Malek. I thought definitely he looks the part of Freddie Mercury. They get the cheekbones right, they get the teeth right. Obviously, it's probably dental appliances, we would hope. But as far as I know, I'm not a Mr. Robot fan or anything. So this was my real introduction to him as an actor. And I thought he really nailed Freddie Mercury very well, especially in some of the more dramatic moments. He gets the persona of Freddie Mercury, as far as I know from archive footage and everything, just just about pitch perfect, and so he definitely deserves a lot of credit for that. And I thought the last half hour of the film was just a total ass kicker. I just thought that last half hour was so good, especially when we get to the stuff. The last half hour or so is, just I don't think it's giving too much away here, but it's when Freddie officially kind of acknowledges the fact that, yeah, there's, he's done a lot of stuff that he shouldn't have done, including a temporary split from Queen. And then he kind of comes back, and then he reveals to them that he has been diagnosed with AIDS and all that. And I thought that was handled beautifully, and that there's a very nice little monologue he kind of gets where he addresses the other members during a practice session. I thought if he's going to get nominated for it, we'll get into my best actor predictions in a minute here. But if he's going to get nominated for that, that's the clip they're probably going to play at the Oscars. So, anyways, that was great. And when we get to the Live Aid stuff, I mean, just totally awesome, awesome work. Very well staged. And I've actually, after I got home here, I kind of Googled and I was like, okay, let me watch. And I watched like the first half of the actual recorded version that's online, at least. It's got 60 million views or whatever of the Live Aid 1985 performance. And it's, it's like, oh yeah, yep. So as far as I know, that's very accurate to the mood and atmosphere and everything there. So yeah, the last half hour just totally works. Unfortunately, everything else in the movie is mediocre. I was pretty let down with the rest of the movie, unfortunately. It really, the biggest thing, of course, for me, it really falls into the traps of, okay, here's, the very, I don't want to say contemporary, but very tried and true story of this is how a music group biopic works. You start with formation, then they get into the hits, then they break up, then they make up. And it's, very much in that style. To a degree, there's a couple of twists and turns here and there, which again, as far as I know, are accurate, but it's still, it becomes very predictable. And there's a couple of scenes with a certain actor who I did not know was in the movie. I won't give it away because I think they tried to hide the fact that this guy's in the movie, and it's, not that it's a bad thing, but it's, it's a genuine surprise when this actor pops up. You're like, holy crap, what's he doing here? And it's and yeah. Anyway, I won't get again, just for spoilers' sake, I will not get into it. But anyways, it was very fun to see him, but unfortunately, the trappings. You know that eventually this character is going to come back, and he's going to do something that's going to lead to this, and then it's going to lead to that, and so on and so forth. And also, I thought that there's a relationship angle that happens between Freddie and some character named Mary. I don't know if that even happened, and I didn't Google it or anything yet. But that just felt very contrived. If it was made for the film, it feels like it. If it wasn't made for the film, if it was, something that actually happened, it was just not very well adapted onto the screen, I thought. So there were definitely lulls in the film for me too, where I was just like, okay, I'm just waiting till we get to something, wait till we get to this, wait till we get to that, So unfortunately, the rest of it, didn't really work for me. And another, just a little pet peeve, but it kind of adds on to the problem. I just hate the fact that you have Freddie Mercury, who is given, obviously he's given the center stage here, and obviously has the front man of the band and everything. He's definitely, that's the thing you have to focus on in the film. They show all the physical transformations with him, from the first part to the famous stash to everything, and they get that right. But it's like everybody else in the band, at least age-wise, stays the same. Their hairstyles change and their clothes change, but it's like their faces are like the exact same across, what is it, like 15, almost 16 years or whatever it is. Because I think they started in 1970 and in 85 there. And then another thing too, and this might just be a personal quip of mine, it ends with the Live Aid stuff, but it doesn't show anything after. And I feel like what happened after 85 and after Live Aid, when Queen kind of got, not to say a resurgence, but like definitely nailed a lot. There were a few more really good songs that they put out after 85. There's not like the same, obviously it's not like half their hits came from before and half of them came from after, but there were a couple recognizable ones and big ones that came after 85. Um, they just didn't even come close to talking about it. They have the very traditional closing title card. It says Freddie Mercury passed away, and it was 91, I believe. And they show all that, and it's like, well, yeah, we all knew that, but it's like, oh, come on, there was some good stuff that they could have explored there, post the Live Aid concert and all that. So, anyways, I mean, I gave the movie overall a 7 out of 10. I thought, like I said, the last half hour was excellent. And I haven't seen everything, of course, this year yet, but it's kind of reminiscent of me of Call Me by Your Name last year, where I thought the last act of Call Me by Your Name more than made up for the tiny lulls I felt in the first and second acts. Well, actually, more the first act for that one. So I thought the third act just was so perfect in Call Me by Your Name. This one, it's very similar in the way of the last half hour really saves it from being I probably would have given it a 5 out of 10 if it wasn't for that last half hour. They just really kicked it into high gear. Now, really quick before we move on, because I also saw another film here today, which was, we'll get into it, but the Bryan Singer thing. There's a very widespread thing happening now where a lot, and I've read a few reviews of the film myself, right before I went to see it. Not that it influenced me in any way, but I went, just to read a couple of reviews, and for the most part, they were, generally what I would call fair reviews. None of them were like, this film is terrible, and none of them were, this is the best film of the year. They were very much middle ground, kind of where I ended up. Again, that it didn't influence me, but just because I had heard so many things, and and a lot of people have shown evidence of this, and it's, from what I hear and from what I'm reading, it's very sound, but there's a lot of critics, especially, who are going into this that are really, from what I understand, not watching the film at all, and they're just giving it negative reviews because the fact that Bryan Singer is still attached to it, name-wise and stuff, because of the DGA rules. So just to give a little bit of clarification here, we've talked about it maybe once through the videos this year, but because of, I think it was last year when they were just about done shooting this film, Bryan Singer was fired off the project because he was very infrequent with coming on set. There were days that he would not show up, and somebody, I believe the cinematographer, the DP, had to kind of take control. Plus, Rami Malek and Singer were really not getting along, and there were, I guess, a couple of confrontations and sometimes very physical confrontations that happened, which forgive me for being the kind of anarchist here, but sometimes you need that on a set. Maybe once, but probably once is enough. If you're trying to motivate your actors, and then sometimes that really works. There's famous cases where that has worked, and sometimes the actor or the director wins an Oscar off of it. There's been cases like that, but it's like it just wasn't working with Singer at the helm, so they brought in Dexter Fletcher to finish, and it supposedly was only a week and a half to 2 weeks to complete principal photography. And then Fletcher kind of looked over some of the editing and stuff on the film and kind of the post-production stuff. But Singer, due to the DGA rules, says if you've directed, I believe the number is like 50%, or 51%, whatever it is, then you still get the sole credit on directing the film, because unless it's an established team, or unless it's siblings, you can't have more than one name on the director's credit for whatever reason. So, and that's DGA rules. Those were set up years and years ago. Obviously, if there's a question of should those be reformed. Well, that's another argument. But anyways, so there's a lot of people that just are giving the film a negative review, regardless of its content, regardless of the performances, regardless of everything else. But because Bryan Singer, who, as again we've mentioned once or twice, has been very, very high up in those ranks of the kind of Me Too movement, where it's somebody who's been targeted with accusations of rape and sexual assault, sexual misconduct, and so on and so forth. Singer has been, one of the very few that have, they've gone through that, and yet they're still working to some degree or another in Hollywood. Whereas, how many others were really just kind of jettisoned. So there's a lot of people that are just pissed off about that, critics especially, who are really bringing in those outside elements and judging the film. Technically, yes, judging the film just on that, and I feel that's totally wrong. as somebody, I would one day, love to be considered a film critic, whether that's for a website or a newspaper, doesn't matter. I'd love to get to that official stage one day, either that or Oscarologist, whatever comes first, but or maybe both. But seriously, we have people that are, like me. I'm doing the hard work, going to a 4-year school and everything. And, getting a major in film studies. I'll actually be graduating here in this spring and out on the job market. But it's like, okay, so you have people like me who work for it, and not say that everybody who's doing this critiquing very very poorly, by the way. Not say they haven't done the work, but I just get the feeling, the first thing you should do as a film critic is realize that whatever outside expectations you have, whatever news you've been hearing about it, no matter what has been going on around the film, you leave that at the door when you fucking take your seat. You go in, you watch the movie, you judge what happens on screen. You don't fucking judge, okay, well, in real life, I hear this character, or not this character, this actor or this director is a dick, so automatically I'm going to vote no on the film. That's not how film critiquing works, and it seriously gives critics a bad rap. This is part of the fucking reason that a lot of general audiences refuse to read critical reviews, and part of the reason why we get all these fucking Transformers sequels, fucking this and fucking that of terrible filmmaking. It's seriously a part of it. I feel like there's a certain, I'm not blaming audiences here, but it's like there's a certain capacity of movie-going public that I think if they took the critics seriously, because there are some that are just out there to be heard, and they take the opposite, reaction, like Armand White famously, kind of taking the low road of, going against the grain just so he can have a voice. It's like, oh, come on. That's part of the reason where, a lot of films that are, pretty objectively bad, of course, objective being just a relative term there, but, pretty, for the most part, generally considered terrible films. If they make money, if they're a brand name or whatever, there's a reason they get a sequel, because they made money. So, I feel like there's a general audience perception of, fuck the critics sometimes. So this is part of the reason why that mentality still exists today. And yeah, so if whoever's doing it, fucking stop. I mean, and seriously, I know there's a lot of professional critics who also do that. Where, oh, I've heard there's a lot of trouble on this set, so I'm going to judge the film on that level and say, well, they tried, so I'm going to give it a passing grade. It's like, no. That's how I kind of felt on, just as another example here, the Solo film, Star Wars Solo, that came out earlier. My opinion was, sure, Ron Howard stepped in and he had less than a year to really finish the film and reshoot, 80%, that's the number they threw out, whatever. He only had less. It was, what was it, 8 months, 9 months, whatever, to work on it. It's like, well, fuck. That's not a reason to give the film a good review just because somebody else got fired and somebody else got hired on. That happens all the time on films. I don't want to go off a total cliff here, but it's like you can name 100 projects where you've had one director on and then another director steps in at some point. Whether that's during production, in pre-production, whatever. In rare cases, post-production. But anyways, again, that's DGA rules kind of make that hard to even happen. Again, unless it's a situation like this where you have to reshoot a lot of it. But anyways, but I went into the film and said, okay, I'm judging the film. I'm not judging how they completed the film and, and looking for footage of where's Lord and Miller's footage and where's Ron Howard's footage. No. That's ridiculous. So, and I felt the film was lacking in a lot of ways. And obviously there's an explanation as to why, because they didn't have a lot of time to put the fine touches and everything on. I get that, but you picked the release date. That's something, and a general audience, as I believe too, can kind of learn from this too. It's not, it's not like if the film doesn't make its release date, they have to push it back. It's not like automatically the film's going to be a failure. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Look at A Star is Born, which is, kind of leading a lot of polls right now for the Best Picture list. That was supposed to come out last winter at some point. It was going to be December or early January, one of those kind of films. Then they pushed it to May of this year. Then they pushed it back again to October. So that's been moved twice. and yet, look at that. It turned out as a pretty good movie for a very good movie for a lot of other audiences. I know I'm kind of in the I'm not in the same boat as a lot of other people on the film, but whatever. I'm fine. I'm fine on that little raft that's drifting in the ocean right now. But anyways, so yeah, I just wanted to state that I did not judge the film in any way because of who was attached to it or anything like that. So I'm not one of those fuck boys who does that, and I know it's mainly guys that are doing it, but it's anybody. Anybody could go in with that attitude, and I just think that gives criticism a terrible, terrible name. Anyway, so now that I'm kind of done with that, we're gonna move on. But anyways, overall, I do recommend it, but it's very much a case where if you spend an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever, match the runtime, and just play some of Queen's greatest hits, you'll get a lot of enjoyment out of that. You'll probably get as much enjoyment out of seeing the movie. But I know already there's a lot of fan reviews that have gone up where a lot of average moviegoers and the public are going in saying, yes, this is a very good film. So yeah, so everybody judge it on their own terms. Anyways, the next film I saw though was one I've mentioned it on and off because at first I was kind of, I don't want to say pessimistic about it, but I was uh, judging a little bit before I'd seen even the trailer for it. But once I saw the trailer, I changed my attitude on it completely, and that was The Hate U Give, which is kind of a young adult novel adaptation. And right away, that gives kind of a bad rap to it. But as we've seen, a lot of young adult novels, including if you include Harry Potter and especially Hunger Games in that, there have been some pretty good ones in the last decade. But this is one I kind of just got a sense from it of it's going to be it's going to be schmaltzy, it's going to be a big Fox production and all that. But then the trailer came out and I'm like, oh no, this is kind of treated in the indie market kind of way, and it looked. I was like from the trailer, I'm like that actually looks really good. So I added it to my list of films to see, and now I've seen it. I'll be fucked. It's the best film of the year so far. It was crazy good. Oh man. I am ecstatic for this film. Oh man, I am so glad I saw it. It's incredible stuff. Anyways, where do I begin with this? There's just so much good stuff here. First of all, the director. I'm just gonna pull up some stuff here. George Tillman Jr., I believe, is the director's name. What else has he done? Because this guy, man, he knows how to direct a movie. Again, I'm not I'm actually just looking over his career here. Is there anything else I've seen where he's directed at least? Soul Food. I've heard good stuff about. I've never sat down to watch it myself. He directed The Longest Ride. Is that the? Oh yeah, it's one of those Nicholas Sparks ones. No, nah. I did for whatever reason I saw that one and that one wasn't good at all. He did Faster with Dwayne Johnson wasn't too bad. See, yeah, Soul Food is one I've everybody or not everybody, but a lot of people I've heard that have watched it really really like it. So that's one. Yeah, from late '90s. I haven't seen that one, but yeah, this guy knows how to direct a movie. He did a great job with this. The cast was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. The young actress who leads it, Amanda Stenberg, I believe is her name. Just wow. What a charming, very, very sympathetic character she creates. Really, and again from the trailer, there's the storyline is, this is a girl, a black girl, who is very much in tune with the community, black community, where she lives. And she goes to all the weekend events, and she goes to all the parties, and she loves going out to eat with her family, and going to there's a barbecue joint that is owned by a good friend of hers and all that, and she has a lot of friends there. And then on the flip side, when she goes to school, though, she goes to a very nice kind of prep school, kind of Catholic school, where pretty much the rest of the student body, besides her and her brother, and or her brothers, there's 3 siblings in there, or 2 siblings plus her, so there's three kids in the family. They're like the only black kids in the school, so everybody else is white. So that right away with that line, I'm like, I'm in. That's a very very good idea for a film. And then it goes into a very racially driven plot, and it's just phenomenally well done. I was almost afraid because a lot of the reviews were really good, so I was like, okay, well that's something to keep in mind. Again, leave all expectations at the door. I still believe in that, and sure, I went into this like, okay, well, it's 97% on Rotten Tomatoes or 96, whatever, it's hovering around there. I'm like, critics are liking it. That's all I really thought about in the back of my mind when I was watching the film, and I realized why, because it's a good movie. Anyways, but yeah, but then it gets into the main plot of it, which is very much a timely topic and everything. And I was worried a little bit that it was just going to take the pro-black approach where it's like everything the cops and the white guys, because it's a white cop that does, there's a shooting in the film. It's in the trailer, so I don't think that's a spoiler by any means. And it's the big thing that sets off the rest of the plot. So, a white cop shoots a black kid that's, like 17, 18 years old. And obviously the community is very upset by it. It doesn't look like things are going to go their way, and the cop's going to get off scot-free and everything. So yeah, obviously there's a lot of protesting and everything that happens there, and what I was really afraid of was it was going to go into that pro-black kind of argument where everything that the white guys did and the police station and the cop specifically did was going to be bad, and everything the black people did in the film, the black community did, was good and perfect, and they never did anything wrong. But no, the film, it got out of that trap, and it really showed that this is a two-sided argument. And yes, it spends a lot more time on the main character, who's Star, that's her name, on Star and her perspective and in the black community and everything. Yes, it spends probably 80% of the runtime on that. But it also shows that there's stuff happening there that's not really good. There's one character played by Anthony Mackie who's a very bad dude, and his wife who's a drunk and really doesn't treat her kids very well. And they go into that. They go into the world is not perfect angle, which, for me, that's always been my stance on a lot of this racial stuff. Now, I personally, without getting into the politics of this way too much, but when you go to like what happened in Missouri over the last 5 years or so with all the racial unrest, I felt like yes, there was definitely some and this is maybe from coming from my perspective as somebody who lives in the Midwest, I felt like there was a lot of upplaying by the media and everything to play up a lot of those cases where everything that the white people did was wrong and everything the black people did was right, when very much it was a little more muddled than that. And I've spoken with people who are actually not actually there, but people who are much closer geographically to everything that happened there over the last 5 years, and they tell it like it is. They say no, there was stuff that and I, as a white guy, there's stuff that we, coming from, again from white perspective, did wrong. There's stuff that the black people, and I know it's terrible to say us and them, but that was the way that it was phrased. There's stuff that the black people did that was maybe not so smart, and yeah, I feel like that's the way the world works, and to view anything else, I think, is really propaganda in many ways. But that's neither here nor there. So I was afraid that the film was going to fall into that trapping, but it did not at all. No, so Amandla Stenberg was terrific. Let me see here. Let me pull up the rest of the cast, because the rest of the cast is just absolutely terrific. You've got Russell Hornsby. We've mentioned him a couple times for supporting actor. Oh, man, in another year, if this film, because I know right now its Oscar chances are somewhere between slim and none, and slim has left the door, or whatever the old joke was. It's something like that. But Hornsby, man, that if anybody from this film besides Amandla is going to get nominated for this, it'd have to be him. He is, I mean, he's in case you don't know, he's the older brother, the oldest son in Fences with Denzel from a couple years ago. And I thought, he only had like 3 or 4 scenes in that film, but all of them were, he was involved in them, and he definitely left a mark there. But this, I mean, he is just phenomenal in this. He is terrific, and really is one of the best fathers on screen that I've seen in a while. I mean, really, he gets it, and it's very good job. Regina Hall, who I've never, she's been in like the Scary Movie franchise and all that. I've never personally seen her in anything that gave a big impression. That changes here. She actually, she does drama. She does it very well. So good for her. She's also really great. you get Issa Rae even had a pretty good part as kind of an activist for the black community. Looking through the rest of the cast, Sabrina Carpenter was good. Common was very, very good as okay. I won't go. Maybe his character is a little bit of a spoiler, so I don't want to give anything about him away. But he kind of plays against type too. If you follow him on Twitter and stuff. Anthony Mackie, we mentioned he gets a little less screen time than a lot of the other main players here, but he does a good job. There's a couple here I'm not familiar with, like Algie Smith, who plays the victim, the African American man who gets shot. Again, he only gets again, not a spoiler here, but he only gets like 2 or 3 scenes, but he very much presents a sympathetic character in there. Yeah, so there is a lot of very, very great stuff in this film, and yeah, I remember when it premiered at TIFF, everybody was very blown away by it, and I was like, okay, well maybe it's a bigger contender than we were thinking. Unfortunately, that is really not translated. It's done okay at the box office for starting in limited release in was it yeah, in the first week of October. Yeah, it started in very limited release, and then it has built up from there. Unfortunately, the original release plan was just to put it wide. I think it would have been the same weekend as Halloween, which it would have been crushed by that at the box office. But I feel like it would have had a bigger opening, definitely from there. Definitely number wise, yeah. But I felt like if there was more of a build up to it, like if they had a couple, like another preview come out with critic quotes and stuff, I think it maybe would have helped the box office out a little bit more. But it's too bad. I think it's only made like 20 million up to this point, which is a shame, because this should absolutely be a poster child for how you do young adult novel adaptations. Because there's been, I mean, obviously Twilight and the rest of the kind of vampire spinoffs and all that. Obviously, those give young adult novels a bad name, and not everything can be Harry Potter, the phenomenon that was. Not everything can be Hunger Games, the mini phenomenon that was. Because I feel like that was gigantic when like the first 2 came out, but then by the time the 3rd and 4th one, it was like, we're kind of sick of this. And now, like today, like even what's it been 3 years since the final chapter came out, everybody's like, we're kind of done with it. So, anyways, but yeah, this was just like I said, the best film I've seen all year. It's very tense in some scenes. There's very good comedic relief here. It has a very poignant message, I think, and I think the ending, how it resolves the whole racial tensions and everything, I thought was like absolutely very, very well handled. And kind of falls in line with my personal beliefs, because I know obviously this is the whole race issue is something we can't just solve overnight, and there's going to be a lot of stuff that has to happen over the next, I would say, 2 or 3 generations before everything is the way that we ideally want it to be, not just in this country but across the globe. And obviously, not that what happened last week at the synagogue in Pittsburgh was necessarily a black versus white issue. But it's just that's just another check mark in that thing of we just don't know how to get along. And in my personal beliefs, there's again, not to go into politics way too much here, but we're all human beings on one level or another. And whether that's at just the base level of, yes, we all have the same organs, we all have the same this and that, except if you're unless you're born without something or other. Obviously, but that's not, and I'm not trying to be funny there, but it's just unless there's by birth you have a defect of some kind, or you're missing a lung, or you're one of your eyes, you're blind, or you're blind or something, born blind or born deaf or something. Unless you're it's cases like that, we are all born with the same things, even if our skin is not the same color as those around us, even if our beliefs are not the same as those around us. We're all human on some level somewhere, and if we all have at least that in common, then we can at least gather on some points on that regard. And I feel obviously at this rate we're not there yet. So, anyways, I thought it was a very poignant film in that way, and it pulled off that very well. Again, there were tense scenes in the film that I really, really went along with. And there were 1 or 2 moments where I was just like, I was sitting back going, no, don't let this happen. And I obviously I won't give away what happens, but I was like, I just I was along for the ride for this one, and I don't, so I know there are a couple of critic reviews I read where it's like, oh, it's so predictable. I'm like, no, no, not unless you read the book all the way through, which I had not heard of the book before the film, before the first poster and the trailer had come out. But yeah, this just knocked me on my ass. It was terrific. So yeah. So that's one. If it's still playing, go see it. It's terrific, regardless of your politics, regardless of all that. I think it's a film that you should see. So yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I don't think it's going to get anywhere near any big pushes at the Oscars unless Fox really gets their shit together. On the film, the only way that could happen is if, funny enough, both Bohemian Rhapsody and Hate You Give are both 20th Century Fox. I think if Fox abandons Bohemian Rhapsody in picture and a couple other categories, obviously they can keep Rami Malek, I think, for actor and well, I don't know what else. Maybe the costumes could be nominated. It doesn't have any original songs, at least none that I picked up on. Maybe makeup, if it qualifies for makeup, it has to make the short list. And maybe the sound mixing category, because musicals sometimes do well there. Oh, yeah, that's right. This one isn't a musical, it's a drama. Fuck you. I'm sorry, but it just the Globes is a different matter, I know, but it's like, oh, they had such an easy path to at least getting a Best Picture nomination there, and they just blew it away. I don't know. They're idiots over there. Anyway, so I'd say unless they pull the plug on all that stuff and push Hate You Give more so, I doubt it's going to happen. And for me, it's kind of like last year what happened with the firefighting movie, Only the Brave, which I saw and I loved. And I thought, oh my God, how is this not in the conversation? And it just went nowhere. Unfortunately, I think it's the same case. But I think I like this one better than that one, for sure. So, okay. So now that long preamble is out of the way, and I've already, I'm sure a lot of you have already exited out of the video because it's like, where's the predictions at? Here we go. So, again, we're going to talk about the top 8 categories with picture, director, acting, and screenplay. So, really, with Best Picture, there's not a whole lot that's changed here as far as what's in and what's out. But it's just the ranking of where everything is. I've really switched up here. So I still have If Beale Street Could Talk out front for now. I'm not quite convinced that the number 2 and number 3 picks for me are ready to pounce over that yet, but we'll see. Number 2 for me is Green Book. I really moved this one up. I think it was number 6 previously. Now it's number 2. I saw the trailer for it twice today in front of both screenings, and yeah, that reminded, because I'd seen the trailer before, obviously, but it's like, this does look really good. It's got the Audience Award at TIFF down pat. I mean, there's quite a few critics and pundits that are putting Mahershala Ali out front for supporting actor for this, and Vigo, I think, legitimately has a shot of winning Best Actor for this, too. And it has to get over the hump of getting Peter Farrelly, the Dumb and Dumber guy, up for Best Director. That's going to be a challenge, but hey, Adam McKay did it for Big Short, so we've got precedent there for that happening. There's a couple obstacles it has to overcome, but otherwise, another thing that I've heard about it a lot, that, again, word of mouth without me having personally seen the film, is that it's a movie where you leave on such a high note. It's just, you leave happy. The movie has a very positive ending to it, where you're just like, oh, that's so good. Which obviously, I think Shape of Water had that quality last year, and that, I think, definitely helped it win over 3 Billboards, the much more angry film. Which in this case, this year's kind of angry film like that, I think, would be Black Klansman in a way. Otherwise, what else? Obviously, well, Hate You Give, I think, has a more positive outlook than Black Klansman, which kind of has a we're all fucked ending a little bit, not bad, but things end well for the characters in the film. But there's, as we've talked about, I think there's the Charleston footage. I think kind of has that ending where it's like, oh no. So, anyways. So yeah, that, and then also Universal's announced that they're going to open it, I believe, a week earlier in limited release, and then the weekend before or during Thanksgiving, I can't remember which, they're going to go wide instead of limited, then probably going wide in December. They're switching that up, which is I think, very smart. And I get to see it sooner, hopefully. So yeah, but I'm starting to really, really get ramped up for that one too. I've got Roma pushed up all the way to 3. I had that one down at number 5. The big news here, Netflix, you finally picked up on it, you sons of bitches. You finally heard what we've all been saying, including me, years ago. Back when Beast of No Nation, when we were afraid that one was going to disappoint, and what do you know, it did. I know I wasn't the first person to say it, but it's like we've all been saying over the past 3 years: open your movies theatrically first before you get them on the fucking site. And that's what they're doing with Roma. They're doing that with Buster Scruggs. They're doing that. 22 July is already out. I haven't seen it yet, but that one's already done, so they can't do anything about that. Crap. What's their other one? I'm forgetting it right now. Still not out yet, but they're ramping up on it. Shit. I can't remember it right now. Those two. What else? There was one more. Hell, it's not coming to me now. But yeah, Roma. Regardless, Roma's going to be their big push this year. But yeah, that one there, I believe it's going to open in now late November before it goes streaming in mid-December. So that I think is a very, very good choice. And as we've seen, I think part of the reason why we've seen films like Mudbound and Beast of No Nation fail to get that Best Picture nomination is there's that very stingy part of the Academy that says, these films are streamed online. They're not released theatrically. They're not films, so I'm not voting for it. I think now that those stingy Academy members, plus I've also heard now through the grapevine a little bit, according to at least two sources, that they're also doing advanced screenings for the film already in both LA and New York. So, and that's again before this now theatrical run they're going to do. So, so that's good news too for them. It's like, okay, so now that that's out there, yeah, I'm starting to think, before I was a little less optimistic about it winning Best Picture. Now, it's got a legitimate shot to win Best Picture now. Again, it has to get over that hump of being a foreign language film with subtitles and no musical score, and no non-professional actors in there. No professional actors except for maybe one or two who are in supporting roles. It has to get over those humps, but if it does, I think it's got a pretty clear shot if Green Book or Beale Street kind of lose steam there. Okay, so I had Black Klansman previously in third. That's now down to fourth. We talked about it last time, but Spike Lee with that whole angle on Best Director, I'm still following that. Not to give too much away about Best Director yet, but I'm still following that, and I think I've also heard now that Spike Lee is starting to really, and Focus Features, they're really starting to rep up now, so they're really getting ready to push this thing, and it's coming out on Blu-ray and DVD this coming week. I'm very anxious to pick up my copy so I can watch it again because I loved it. Definitely, like I said, Spike Lee's best film in a long time. So good, good on him, and I really hope he pulls through and it gets all the nominations it deserves. I've got The Favorite down in fifth place now. Yes, I think this is definitely one to keep an eye on here. And it again, it comes out late November, and I think it's got enough steam behind it still. Star is Born is up to sixth. I think I had it down in seventh, so that one just changed a little bit. Like I said, there's a lot of sites that are putting Star is Born out front right now, and I've listened to all their reasons for it, and obviously there's a lot of them. Number one, it's a very popular film, both with critics and audiences. Number two, it's made a lot of money. Number three, it's great to see another actor turned director have big success here. And the Academy really likes to go for that. So, that's, again, a lot of stuff to keep in mind. But for me, I just look at, and again, kind of letting my personal views on the film kind of come in a little bit on this. There's a lot of contrived and very cliched parts to the story. Again, not to sound like a broken record if you've seen every other video I've done, but Cooper is, acting-wise, phenomenal in the film. He could very easily win the Oscar if Viggo or Christian Bale or a couple others kind of lose steam there, and Lady Gaga, I liked her. I definitely think she'll get nominated, but I don't quite see her winning yet. But I still don't understand why she is the only one who can win. It's like, no, come on. Just based on performance alone, you've got to be shitting me with that sentiment. Anyways, so I have it in sixth, and I might bump it up more as time goes on. I've Black Panther actually up in seventh place now. I had it down in ninth earlier, I believe. And the reason for this is I'm starting to think, I'm remembering last year where Get Out was, and Black Panther was doing everything that Get Out was doing up to this point last year. Get Out, all it had to do, because I think the quality of Get Out was very high quality. It was my second favorite film of last year. It was my favorite film of the year up until when I saw Three Billboards last year in December. So it held that for like 9 months or however long. I said all it has to do if it really wants to score well at the Oscars is stay in the public mind and really just stay out there and stay as a conversation piece about what if it lands some Oscar nominations. That's all it had to do until the publicity train picked up and until the studio really picked up on that. It sounds like Black Panther has got that down pat. So they've got supposedly everybody who can, because I know it's a very popular cast now, and a lot of them are working on other projects. Michael B. Jordan obviously is about to go out on the press junket and stuff, I'm sure, for Creed 2, and he's ramping up for that. Bozeman is, he might be working on some Avengers stuff, and maybe a few of the other cast members are too, so they're busy as well. But everybody who can kind of do the rounds on the film for publicity and the kind of ground game in both LA and New York to go out to the voters, they're doing it. So, so I think that one, as far if it's going to win Best Picture, I don't think so. Will it have the distinction of being the first comic book movie nominated for Best Picture and all that? I think it will, yes. Clear down in eighth is where First Man lands. Yes, this one I think has fallen hard. Maybe harder than some other pundits are putting it right now. I think it's in the top 5 on IndieWire, and it's number 3 on just what I've got pulled up here on Gold Derby. So I think it's only going to fall from there, unfortunately. I like the film a lot. Again, I see there is some stuff about it that I was kind of like. I still think the first act kind of takes a while to get going, but I thought the ending was very good as well. That's another one where the last half hour was really good, but I don't know. This is two very different endings though, and especially coming off of how the first 2 hours did, or however long up to that point. Actually, they're both about 2 hours 15 minutes or so. So yeah, how the first hour 45 went, compared to the last half hour, I think is very different conversations there. But I still think it's definitely going to get a number of nominations, especially more so in the tech categories now than I think the top categories. But yeah, I think that one's in there. Number 9, I still have Vice, kind of lower again at this point because hasn't been screened. I guess word of mouth from a couple of people behind the project or who know people who are involved in the project say McKay's got a winner here, but obviously we've heard that about a lot of stuff that has not turned out. Like Silence, I think, had a pretty similar thing a couple years ago, and that landed 1 nomination. So we'll see. And then in number 10, I have Can You Ever Forgive Me? I finally got it in, which means I pulled Widows out. So Widows I don't have in there anymore, but that I still think very much has a legit shot to sneak in there if it really scores well. But Can You Ever Forgive Me, though, I think the box office so far in its limited run has been very, very good. I think it's definitely got 2 acting nominations, almost down pat. The screenplay nomination is, I think, a very legit shot. And again, going to the politics in the best director race, we don't really have a lot of female directors this year that have kind of high profile projects. Marielle Heller is really the only one here with this one. So again, if we come down to a kind of push to get a female nominee in there in the director list, I think she's the one that everybody's going to back. So obviously, the politics of it, I think, is part of the conversation, but we'll see. But where am I going with this? I was going to say something about this, but I forgot exactly how I wanted to word this. But it's like, really, again, I still stand on, okay, if we're nominating here, we should be nominating the best. We should not take the politics of it, race, color, gender, all that should be really left to the side. But even though I'm kind of a hypocrite in that way because I still have Spike Lee winning on a bet that he's going to pick up momentum on the fact that he would be the first African American director to win this category. So sure, but take that with a grain of salt. But yeah, I think if they're gonna, again, going back to that point, if they're gonna back anybody this year in the director race for just because they're a female director, which I felt was kind of the case for Greta Gerwig, but I don't want to get into too much hot water there. But she's the one to back this year. Okay, moving on though. speaking of best director, though, I still have Spike Lee up front, like I mentioned. Barry Jenkins in second, Alfonso Cuarón. I have him in third now. I had him in fourth. I've still got Yorgos in there for the favorite, and in fifth place, I'm biting the bullet on this one. It's Bradley Cooper. I put him in. Again, I just go back to the number of the number of times in the past where you've had actors turned directors, especially on their first try, get nominated for best director. You go back to Orson Welles for Citizen Kane, Warren Beatty, who co-directed Heaven Can Wait. He got nominated and he won on his next film, Reds, or I think that was his next one, wasn't it? Yeah, I think so. Obviously, Mel Gibson comes to mind with Braveheart. Even though he had directed another film, that was his first nomination as director, and he won. Kevin Costner, of course, last year with both Greta Gerwig and Jordan Peele. There's a number of other examples out there, but with the popularity of film and everything else playing toward it, yeah, I'm starting to think, yeah, this is going to happen. Even though I personally think that 60 other guys or girls could have directed A Star Is Born the same way that Bradley did, like I said, I have to kind of bite the bullet here on that one, which means that yes, I have to push Damien Chazelle out for First Man, and I think legitimately this is what's going to happen too. I think First Man, I think it's respected on a pretty high level by a lot of voters. From just word of mouth, from what I've heard so far, from those conversations that have already begun. But again, that's only from I'm hearing this only secondhand. I don't get out. I don't know any voters around me. I'm in the middle of the fucking country. I don't get to I'm not next door to any Oscar voters or anything. But again, they respect the film, and the acting categories we're probably going to see, and I have both Gosling and Claire Foy nominated. Screenplay is still probably a good bet at this rate, but that could fall off. And the tech categories, they'll probably all go for it, but the director one is kind of shaky right now, I think. Anyways, yeah, so that's my lineup there. Moving over to the actor race, I have another switch here. Still have Christian Bale out front for Vice. I'm going to go with that until Cooper starts winning everything, or Vigo starts winning everything, or Ethan Hawke. Yep, I've got him in now. So anyway, so here's the full list. I have Christian Bale out front, then Bradley Cooper, then Vigo for Green Book, then Ryan Gosling for First Man. Then I do have Ethan Hawke now in for First Reformed. Again, this is just kind of for now, just because he really landed with that nomination at Gotham. That helped him, and I think there's a scenario here where a lot of the critics groups, which are going to start sounding off here in about a month, 30 days is what I mean to say. Obviously, it's a month, but yeah, I think like New York film critics, I can easily see them going for somebody like Ethan Hawke. National Board of Review very much can go for Ethan Hawke, and I feel like especially the I don't know who's behind the film here. For the distributor. I'm just gonna look it up really quick so I can see here. Oh, it's A24. Yeah, that's the thing. A24. Shit. What do they have out this year? Because as we've seen, obviously with Moonlight a couple years ago, they pulled off a huge upset. It was a robot one, Ex Machina. I love that movie too. That one, visual effects, that was the biggest upset, in some regard of that year's Oscars. They had both Lady Bird, Disaster Artist, and a couple other ones in the conversation last year. Florida Project was another one. But this year though, they don't, because Annapurna has both Vice and Beale Street, so they're going to be doing that. Fox Searchlight has The Favorite, and they also have Can You Ever Forgive Me, so they're fighting that out. Disney/Marvel, whoever is going to do the actual work there, has Black Panther. Universal has both Green Book and First Man, so they're split there. Warner Brothers has Star Is Born, that's probably going to be their big back. Netflix has Roma, Focus has, and that's also division of Universal. They have BlacKkKlansman, and that's from the ones I have getting in. But otherwise, Widows is 20th Century Fox. Bohemian Rhapsody is 20th Century Fox. A24 does not really have a big player this year. Not really. So I would feel if I were them, and they've done a lot of great stuff here in the kind of limited time that they've been around as a major studio in the independent market right now. at Oscars, you guys have been very much doing all the right moves to get your stuff nominated. Yeah, I don't know if that's their plan now that this the film is really starting to take off at some of the smaller awards so far, and from what we can guess, how it's going to do a little later on. If I were them, I would push all my chips in and say, let's do a full blown campaign with this if they're not already on it. Which something tells me that, and I know Hawk has already done a couple of rounds here and there after the film came out on disc and everything too. So I know he's pumped for it and everything. So, and plus, you have to remember he's been nominated twice as an actor and twice as a screenwriter as well. So he is very known across the Academy there. Yeah. So again, I'm pulling Rami Malek back out. I had him out. I had him in at first, and I pulled him out in favor of. I had Lucas Hedges in there earlier for Boy Erased, but he's gone too, obviously. Then I put him back in, and now that I've seen the film, it's like I think I can already read the headlines of him being a big snub, and a lot of people are going to get pissed. But I think that's the way it's going to work, unfortunately. But there you go. Anyways, so yeah, that's how I think on Best Actor now. Actress, again, I this is the biggest confuddled category for me this year. Uh, I'm kind of abandoning my Saoirse Ronan pick for now, and I'm going with Glenn Close, just on the whim that again that the wife and Sony Picture Classics and Glenn's publicists and her agents, everybody who can, including Glenn herself, are really going to play up this six wins, or excuse me, six nominations, no wins angle. Which again, we've seen Paul Newman and Geraldine Page and Julianne Moore and several other actors and actresses across the years. Really, if they really tackle that in their campaign, it can pay off big time. And I think it did for Julianne Moore most recently. I think it will for Glenn Close as well. So I have her out front now. Again, just on that whim. I've got Olivia Colman in second, though, for the favorite. Then I've got Melissa McCarthy in third. Viola Davis, I still have getting in for Widows. And I can, I mean, again, without having seen the film yet, I can see a scenario where she can win, too. Widows, I feel, is going to do okay with the Academy in general. I still have Daniel Kaluuya getting in for supporting actor. We'll get to him. But, if it gets two acting nominations, that's a good sign. Screenplay is still a possibility. I'm not... There's a couple of question marks there in that adapted screenplay category still at this rate, but yeah, I think it can get probably about that 5 or 6 nomination stage. It could sneak back into my Best Picture predictions too. So, but Viola obviously is very well respected across the acting community. Has just won a couple years ago, sure, but hey, Mahershala just won 2 years ago, and everybody already says he's going to win again. Same could happen for Viola, and funny enough, they won the same year. Wouldn't that be great? Mahershala would be the same category with her. It'd be changing from supporting to lead, where arguably she should have been for Fences, and she would have won for lead acting if she was in Fences too. But anyways, but yeah, from what I hear just from the film itself, she's got the emotional scenes, she's got the badass scenes, she's got the leadership scenes, she's got the whole ensemble scenes where she's part of an ensemble and all that. So I think, and that's, we've seen a lot of actors who really benefit from that win Oscars for sure. So yeah, I think there's an angle where she can win. There's an angle for Melissa McCarthy with the changing over from drama, or from comedy, excuse me, to drama, hard drama too, and really not batting an eyelash in that regard. So there's an angle there. And Fox Searchlight has a history of really bearing down and getting those Oscar wins in the acting categories. We saw 2 last year alone. And then Olivia Colman, I think, has an angle because of she could be if the critics groups don't go for Glenn Close, or if they don't go for like Catherine Hahn or somebody like that, like or Yalitza Aparicio for Roma, unless they go for somebody like that, they'll go with Olivia Colman for the favorite. And that's her angle there. She, I think, will win the Comedy Musical Globe. If I can get my dyslexia out of the way for a second. I don't legit have it, but trying to make a joke there. Unless that happens, I think if that does happen and everything kind of goes forward there and Olivia also wins like SAG or something, and really if Glenn Close is like right there, or if McCarthy's right there behind her, or Lady Gaga is still in the race at that point, if whoever wins SAG, I think is, as long as if they've got a record at that rate, unless somebody out of nowhere wins SAG like Idris Elba did a couple years ago, but he wasn't nominated, and that kind of helped shake up that race a little bit. Unless something like that happens, I think SAG, by the time we get to SAG, that's going to be a big determiner of this category. So yeah, I do have Lady Gaga in fifth for Star Is Born. Again, part of that is just my personal tastes on her particular performance, and uh, that we're gonna have disagreements there, I'm sure. But yeah. So I have her at least getting nominated. I know she's kind of leading the polls here. I don't know why, but God help me. Okay, supporting actor. I'm still going with the Sam Rockwell thing. I'm just holding on to that for a little bit longer, but but part of the reason why too is I was after kind of reading the headlines of now Mahershala really jumping up here with Green Book. I'm in third right now. Um, the thing is, Rockwell just won this category last year. Mahershala just won this 2 years ago. So that kind of opens the door for Timothée Chalamet, who was nominated last year, and of the five guys that were nominated, probably should have won just based on performance and stuff, and in my personal taste as well. That opens the door for Timothée, but his film Beautiful Boy had very high expectations when it opened at TIFF, and has since completely fallen apart. So, and so far at the box office, it's doing good, but not great. I still very much want to see it. I think it looks really good, but that's me. He is at this point probably going to be the only nomination for his film, so that hurts. At least going back to a few years ago, Whiplash. I was kind of afraid with J.K. early on. I was kind of afraid that he was not going to win very early, but then by I think November, I'd switched to him. So at that point, I thought, well, Whiplash is not going to get into any other category. Whoops. Then it gets into picture, and then it gets into screenplay, and it gets into a few of the other tech categories there. So that obviously did not become a factor. But I think with Beautiful Boy, though, I don't see what else it's going to get nominated for. Carell is starting to become more and more of a long shot for Best Actor. The screenplay is not a lock by any means. That's really Best Picture again starting to become a real long shot there too. So yeah, but yeah, I'll probably that's why I'm kind of not moving anything right now in those predictions. Still have Richard E. Grant in for fourth place and Daniel Kaluuya in fifth place. Yeah, and I know we just did a SAG video, and I said that Sam Elliott was in my predictions for SAG. I've since pulled him out and put Daniel Kaluuya back in for Widows there at SAG as well. So yeah. So that's my feelings on this. But yeah, like I said, of the performances I've seen this year, though, good God, justice will not be done if Russell Hornsby doesn't get nominated. At least again from the stuff I've seen so far. Now, obviously, if there's five better performances this year, then that's a different story. But anyways, but God damn, he was terrific in that. I really hope, yeah, that some of the actors in that film really get a push from that. But anyways, career wise, I know that at the Oscars, it's kind of it's what's the word I'm thinking of here? I can't even think of the phrase. Happy or thinking something or okay, it'll come to me later. Anyways, Regina King is still out front for me for supporting actress. I've got Claire Foy in a strong second place for First Man. Emma Stone, wishful thinking. That's the phrase I was thinking of. There you go. Emma Stone in third for The Favorite. Amy Adams still down in fourth for Vice. I've pulled out Margot Robbie in favor of Rachel Weisz for The Favorite in fifth place. Yeah, I still, again, I'm kind of going with that because of Mary Queen of Scots not opening yet at any of the festivals or anything. So, yeah. I might push her back in if that film really goes over well. And if it does too, that leaves me with Best Actress. It's like, okay, who do I pull? Because, oh, God, that Best Actress category. There's like 7 or 8 legit contenders at this point where it's like, somebody will yell at you if you don't have all 8 of these in, but it's like you only have 5 slots. So regardless, somebody's going to yell at you. Anyway, so adapted screenplay, I've still got BlacKkKlansman out front. Then Beale Street Could Talk in second place. Then I've got Can You Ever Forgive Me in third, all the way up to third. Widows in fourth, and First Man in fifth. Really, at this rate, I think it's these 5. Star Is Born has a shot. Actually, not just wishful thinking for me. One thing I didn't mention yet was Audrey Wells is the screenwriter on The Hate You Give. Unfortunately, she passed away, actually, I think right as the film was opening in limited release. We saw last year Harry Dean Stanton passed away right as his film was opening too, and that didn't help him at all, except for getting a Gotham nomination. So again, that might just be wishful thinking, but And that's another thing too is Audrey Wells is not somebody who's, to my knowledge, been nominated before at the Oscars. Yeah, she was writer on like A Dog's Purpose and The Game Plan and George of the Jungle, oh, for God's sake. So, unfortunately, to hear she passed away. I know she was only she was 58 years old, so it wasn't she wasn't in the game very long, I guess. But too bad there. But anyways, I think it is a strong script, though. And again, I don't. Maybe it's just because she literally took lines from the book and put it in the screenplay. I don't know. But regardless, it's you're judging what's there on the screen from screenplay wise from what you can tell and how the dialogue comes off and everything. So, again, from what I've seen this year, I think that should be very much near the top of the list. Yeah. So, anyways, so those are my thoughts on that. Then original screenplay, I have the favorite still out front to win that one. I have Green Book in second, Vice in third, Roma in fourth, and I put in First Reformed in fifth place. I'm starting to think because if Ethan Hawke happens, I think it'll also get a screenplay nom. It's Paul Schrader who wrote it, and he, I believe, has been nominated. He was a Taxi Driver, right? I believe so. Yeah, let's see here. He was nominated. I know he's never won the an Oscar or anything, but yeah, wasn't he nominated for? He had been nominated for something. See, I'm kind of looking through here. Or he hasn't won an Oscar yet, has he? I don't think so. Let's see. This page I'm looking at doesn't make it very clear. Let's see. He was nominated at the Globes for his screenplay for Taxi Driver, nominated at WGA, nominated for a screenplay at Globes for Raging Bull. Yeah, okay, it's just the Globes, I guess. Yeah. Anyways, but I know he's been around a while too. He's a legend in Hollywood in his own right. Also as a director, not just as a screenwriter, and he also directed this. So keep that in mind too. So I think that's kind of reminiscent to me of Flight a few years ago, Robert Zemeckis' film with Denzel. Denzel got in and the screenplay got in. So I can kind of see that happening with Ethan Hawke here. And it'd actually be the exact same categories too, because those were both in the original category. I did pull out Eighth Grade because of that, and that's one again I might switch it later, but yeah, I think at this rate, that original screenplay category is really just not nearly as tough as last year. The only other one I can see, kind of on a whim, possibly getting in is A Quiet Place, but again, that would be a stretch. That's kind of a stretch and a kind of long shot for me, at least at this point. Um, and I think there's a couple things I want to say about it. First of all, the came out early on, and I know it was a big box office hit, but we have to keep that in mind. Number two, just because Get Out last year really scored at the Academy Awards as a horror film, we have to remember horror films traditionally do not do well at the Oscars. It has to be every now and again. It has to be like The Sixth Sense or like The Exorcist or like Silence of the Lambs or like last year Get Out. It's every so years that it gets like a picture nomination or screenplay or a lot of nominations across the board like Sixth Sense and Silence of the Lambs did and Get Out to some extent. That doesn't mean we have to expect it every year. So just for some genre fans, just keep that in mind at the Oscars. Okay, but yeah, I was kind of thinking it through too. It's like okay, because I was at one point earlier today, I was thinking about it. I'm like, okay, well, if I put Green Book out front for picture, I could also put out Mahershala Ali because I doubt Green Book would win picture and nothing else. And I don't know yet about Beale Street because right now I don't have it winning screenplay. I don't have it winning other than Regina King. I don't have it winning a ton of other Oscars at this point. Okay, if that would happen, okay, so that Green Book would probably take an acting prize. It'd have to take either Vigo or Mahershala or both. That could happen. Excuse me. And then I said, well, probably screenplay then. And funny enough, think about it, Moonlight, the film that won Mahershala his Oscar, he won, the picture won, and the screenplay won. Yeah, what do you know? So that could be an exact duplicate of Moonlight. Also, in the way of it could get in for director, it could get in for another acting prize because Naomi Harris was also nominated for Moonlight. Screenplay, uh, I don't know if it can get in for the exact other nominations that Moonlight had. Like, I don't know about cinematography. I don't know about film editing. I don't know about score for Green Book. But it'd be funny enough though if it landed a lot of the same nominations. Again, not in the same categories, but in the same area as Moonlight did. That would be a very funny coincidence indeed. All right, so yeah, that's all I'm going to do for now. Like I said, I've got a Globes video updates I'll have to do, and also updates, or not just updates, but first thoughts and stuff on the tech categories at the Oscars too, like the cinematography and original song, what we know about that so far. Haven't mentioned animated feature yet. We can get into that a little bit. The sound categories and costumes and all that stuff. So yeah, we'll get into that pretty soon here. So. As you can tell, I've had a pretty long day here, so I'm gonna I will record those at a later time. So if this one goes up and the other two come a little further down the road, that's why. All right, take care, everybody.